Welcome, everyone. Kristin and I are very excited to be here with you today. Now, over the next hour, we are going to discuss how to save your nest egg or your pot of gold, since we're in March, from being stolen by the leprechaun. This presentation is a little different from the usual presentations that we give. In this presentation, Kristin and I are going to discuss 3 golden nuggets that you can use to protect your pot of gold. And we're also going to give you many scenarios that we typically see at our office. But first, we should go over what is included in your pot of gold. Your pot of gold includes your assets, your income, your house, any personal property, but also your loved ones, your spouse, your family, and even for some, your pets. Now, the scenarios that Kristin and I will discuss will involve your pot of gold. Everyone is concerned about protecting their pot of gold. We all want to plan and prepare so that our pot of gold is safe and so that we can keep our loved ones out of harm's way. These scenarios that we will discuss will also include a leprechaun that tries to steal your pot of gold. This leprechaun could be the state of Pennsylvania, it could be nursing homes, or it could be a family member that's trying to take control that you don't like. Regardless, the leprechaun is not who we typically want our pot of gold to go to. Now, in the next hour, you're going to discover the value of having powers of attorney, how to make sure your money goes to the beneficiaries that you choose, and how to protect your assets from long-term care costs. This presentation is for you if you're scared of not being able to make your own decisions, or if you're sick and tired of thinking about what will happen to your assets when you pass away. This could also be for you if you're worried about what will happen to your spouse if you need care, or even if you're afraid that you might lose your house at some point. Now imagine you could wave a magic wand and have a plan in place, a plan that doesn't burden your families, a plan that protects for your spouse and your loved ones, a plan that avoids conflict within your family, and a plan that gives you peace of mind at the end of the day. This is possible. See what our client Patricia Fry had to say. I'm sure glad I made the call. My husband had experienced some health challenges, so we knew it was the right time to put things in order financially to be properly prepared for the future. The thing I most appreciated was that they listened to what we needed and then provided outstanding guidance throughout the entire process. It was as if they developed a roadmap that we can now follow. They made things so easy. There's no one I would want to take care of us more than these people. Now, before we get too far, let us introduce ourselves. I'm Jenna Franks. I'm one of the attorneys at Steinbacher, Goodall, and Yurchak. I work primarily out of our state college location. In this picture, this is my husband, Josh, our daughter, Ava, and our newest addition, Grayson. Now, to give you a little more background on me, I actually wanted to be an attorney since the 8th grade. I always saw an argument for either side of a situation. So basically, I drove my parents crazy because I always played the devil's advocate. At the end of the day, though, I wanted to make a difference, and what better way than through the legal system? We lived in Florida for about 10 years, and I practiced in several different areas of law, but nothing spoke to me. Then we got a phone call that both of our grandparents had been hospitalized and weren't doing well. We decided it was time to move home and help out. This is Graham and Pat, 2 of the cutest and sweetest older people that I know. They were married over 60 years. This is one of the last happy pictures that we have of them. Graham ended up with dementia and a broken hip, and Pat suffered a stroke that made him very weak. They both needed long-term care, but just like most people, they wanted to stay at home as long as possible. Going through this process for my loved ones, including even living with our grandparents for a year, helped me realize how important planning is so that you have more options. And I know, Kristin, too, you've seen many of these same situations.
Yes, thanks, Jenna. Good morning, everybody. My name's Kristin, and I am a long-term care planner with Steinbacher, Goodall, and Yurchak. I'm one of the few certified Medicaid planners in Pennsylvania, a certified dementia practitioner, And also I am an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care trainer. This allows me to train other professionals in the community on how to appropriately handle an individual with a dementia diagnosis. This year, I will have been with Steinbacher, Goodall, and Yurchak for 10 years. And prior to joining the firm, I worked for the Area Agency on Aging, setting up services for those who could safely stay at home. Now, this is my family. This is my 11-year-old daughter, Kendall, my just yesterday 6-year-old son, Kyler, my husband, Kyle. And yes, we all have K names. And yes, my kids are redheads, despite my husband and I having brown hair. As you can see, we also apparently like red pets. We have our Fox Red Lab Chestnut, our cat Sprinkles. They actually really hate each other. It's kind of like Tom and Jerry in my house, except with a cat and dog instead of a mouse and a cat. We also have horses. We have Rusty, Bam, and at the top is our baby, Bo. He's just about to be 2 years old. And at the bottom is our newest addition, Voss, who came with us last summer. But how did I end up here? How did I end up where I am right now? Well, much like Alice in Wonderland, I really fell into it. I always knew that I wanted to help people. And in college, I went into sociology and psychology. I took an internship at a drug and alcohol facility, but knew right away that was not for me. Soon after, the Area Agency on Aging was hiring. I took a chance and applied, and I'm so glad that I did. I loved going to work every single day, helping people, but like many social service agencies, resources, funding, and manpower is limited. So that's how I ended up transitioning to Steinbacher, Goodall, and Yurchak, where I'm able to go above and beyond every day doing what I love most, helping families, protecting spouses, and giving the right advice. I work alongside the attorneys every single day to explore options for care, applying for benefits, connecting seniors with resources, and most importantly, advocating for those in need. But the main reason I'm so passionate about what I do is because of being able to help somebody like Nancy. Now, I'd love to tell you Nancy's story, but I really think her testimonial says it all. After my husband went into a nursing home, I went to another law firm in the area to see what could be done about paying for his care. They said there was nothing they could do for me and that I'd have to spend down my money for him to then be eligible to receive Medicaid. I was very concerned and felt they just left me on my own. I was later told to call this firm. I figured why not? Because at this point I had nothing to lose. After explaining my situation, I was told to come in right away because I required immediate attention. What they did for me was unreal, especially after being told I was in a hopeless situation by another firm. They took action to protect our assets and get my husband's nursing home bills taken care of into the future. Everyone was so wonderful. I'd taken my daughter with me, and when she were told that the bills were going to be paid, she cried because she knew what the other lawyer had previously said. I can't say enough about this kind of attention to detail. But today isn't about Nancy. It isn't about me, Jenna, or Kyle. This is about you. My goal for you today is to give you the tools so you know what you need to do to make sure that you and your loved ones are taken care of during your second half of life. What you're going to discover today, the right information. We're going to give you the right information, the value of having good powers of attorney, how to plan for your beneficiaries, and what you can do right now to protect your assets. We're going to take you from where you are right now to where you want to be. Let's get started talking about the essential estate planning documents that everyone must have. Jenna?
Thanks, Kristin. So the first way to protect your pot of gold is by having powers of attorney in place. Everyone over the age of 18 should have powers of attorney. Our office usually puts 4 powers of attorney together for each of our clients. Those include a financial power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, a living will, and a mental health power of attorney. But we're not just talking about any general power of attorney that you could print off the internet. Sometimes having bad powers of attorney can be just as bad as having no powers of attorney. You need to have good powers of attorney. But why are powers of attorney so important? Well, let's talk about the risks of not having them. If you don't have powers of attorney and something happens where you're unable to make your own decisions, then your loved ones must seek what's called a legal guardianship. This is a process through the court system where the family must ask a judge to appoint a guardian to make financial and healthcare decisions on your behalf. This process is costly, time-consuming, and at the end of the day, you lose control because it's up to the judge to appoint who will be making decisions for you. It may or may not be who you would appoint for yourself. And believe it or not, even your spouse can't step in and automatically make decisions for you. In fact, the state of Pennsylvania assumes that you don't want your spouse to make financial decisions for you. So by not having a power of attorney, you could really limit what your spouse is able to do about finances. Later in the presentation, we will see how this could lead to impoverishing your spouse or even losing everything to the nursing home if you need care. Next, let's look at some of the scenarios for each of the 4 powers of attorney that we've mentioned. In this set of scenarios, we will be discussing Bill and Fran, a married couple. And let's assume for this scenario that there's an accident and Bill becomes unable to make his own decisions. First is the financial power of attorney. This authorizes your power of attorney to make financial decisions on your behalf. They can deal with bank accounts, handle real estate, they can pay your day-to-day bills, and basically deal with any asset or income that you have in your name. So since Bill is unable to make his own decisions, if he has a financial power of attorney, Fran would be able to step in and make financial decisions on his behalf. However, if Bill has no financial power of attorney, Fran is not able to step in and handle his finances. She would have to seek that legal guardianship through the courts, not necessarily the route we'd like to go. Next is the healthcare power of attorney. This document authorizes your power of attorney or your agent to make decisions such as who your doctor would be, what hospital or facility you can be treated at, and it's HIPAA compliant so that your power of attorney can talk to your doctors and access medical records so that they can make good decisions for you. In our scenario, let's assume that Bill and Fran have 3 children. If Bill and Fran can't make their medical decisions and don't have healthcare powers of attorney, their 3 children will have to make a mutual decision. The more children you have, I'm sure everybody knows, the less of a chance that they're actually going to be able to make a mutual decision together. But with multiple children, there's more of a chance for conflict. It would be better for Fran and Bill to have a healthcare power of attorney appointing the children that they would want to be making healthcare decisions for them. Next is the living will, which is also called the end of life document. This applies if the doctors are saying you're in an end of life situation, such as a permanent coma, a permanent vegetative state, or you have a terminal condition. If you do find yourself in one of these end of life situations, the living will addresses what types of life-sustaining treatments you want, such as breathing machines, feeding tubes, chemo, or dialysis. Most clients that we meet with do not want these treatments if the doctors are saying they're end of life regardless. In our scenario with Bill and Fran, if the doctors are saying that Bill is end of life and he doesn't have a living will or any other evidence of his end of life decisions, then Bill will receive full treatment regardless of the cost and the prognosis of his condition. On the other hand, if Bill does have a living will, then the family and the medical team can follow his wishes, whatever they are at that time. And the last power of attorney is the mental health power of attorney. This is a newer document in Pennsylvania. It allows your power of attorney to make decisions such as who your mental health doctors would be if you need that type of treatment, what mental health facilities you can be treated at, and it addresses treatments that are specific to mental illnesses. For example, most forms of dementia do not have a cure at this point in time, so all we have are labs, studies, and medicinal trials to try to slow the progression of the illness. Most of these forms of treatment have not been proven yet, and so they're sort of in a gray area. For your power of attorney, To be able to say yes or no to you being involved in these types of treatments, you must have a mental health power of attorney in place. Now, in our scenario with Bill and Fran would be able to step in and set up drug trials or experimental studies for Bill if there was a mental health power of attorney in place. Without the mental health power of attorney, Fran would not be able to say yes or no to Bill receiving these types of treatments. So, what do you need to do to avoid these situations where the leprechaun is trying to step in? You want to meet with an elder law attorney. Elder law attorneys are the attorneys that you will deal with for many of your second half of life situations, such as planning for retirement, planning for long-term care, or even planning for your death. So meet with an elder law attorney to review any current documents that you have in place right now. Get good powers of attorney if you don't have them right now, because remember, this avoids putting your family in those bad situations that we talked about, such as guardianship, impoverishment, or family disputes. The second way that you can protect your pot of gold is by planning for your passing or your death. This discussion usually covers a last will and testament, beneficiary designations, and sometimes a trust. Most people know that a last will and testament states where you want your assets to go once you pass away. You appoint an executor to administer your estate and make sure the money goes to your beneficiaries the way that you want it to. Your last will and testament can also appoint a testamentary guardian over your minor children if something happens to you and the child's other parent. However, your will does not necessarily state where all of your assets will go. If you have accounts with beneficiary designations, such as life insurance policies or retirement accounts, those accounts will pass to the beneficiaries that you appoint, regardless of what your will says. So it's important to check those beneficiary designations from time to time. Sometimes trusts are also necessary depending on your goals, your assets, your family structure, and your health. Now, keep in mind, there are lots of different types of trusts and a lot of different reasons to use trusts. The two most common trusts that you typically hear about are revocable and irrevocable trusts. Irrevocable trusts are typically the trusts that we use to protect your assets from the costs of long-term care. In Pennsylvania, only irrevocable trusts offer protection against creditors like the nursing home or the state. Now, this time in our scenarios, we have Tom and Wendy, another married couple. In the first scenario, Tom has just passed away. In our leprechaun example, Tom has no will. Therefore, his estate will pass according to the Pennsylvania intestate laws, which basically means that Wendy is entitled to the first $30,000, and then the rest of the estate will be split 50% to Wendy, 50% to their children. Wendy is not automatically entitled to Tom's entire estate just because she's the spouse. This could be concerning if Wendy doesn't have enough money to live off of in the future. Whereas if Tom has a will that states everything goes to Wendy if he passes away, Wendy is entitled to the entire estate. In the next example, Tom and Wendy have both suddenly passed away and they have a minor child. In the leprechaun example, Tom and Wendy made no provisions in their will or estate plan for what would happen to the minor child, who would care for her, or how the money should be spent on the child's behalf. This can leave the family in turmoil and does not make anything easier for the minor child herself. Whereas if Tom and Wendy did make provisions in their estate planning, this would make for a much easier transition for the minor child and for the family. Next, Tom and Wendy wanted some money to go to a charity while the rest of the money went to their children. In the leprechaun example, Tom and Wendy left their life insurance to the charity and gave everything else to their children, which is common for us to see at our office. What they didn't know is that their children will have to pay 4.5% inheritance tax on everything they receive except life insurance. Life insurance is the only asset that passes to your beneficiaries inheritance tax free, whereas charities don't have to pay any inheritance tax. So the better way to handle this is by setting aside other money for the charity and letting that life insurance to the children so the children can avoid paying as much in inheritance tax. Now, Tom and Wendy have a child with a disability. While their hopes for their child are for their child to be as independent as possible, they anticipate that the child will need government benefits in the future. If Tom and Wendy pass away without planning for this child, the estate will go directly to the child, and she is likely to lose any government benefits that she's qualified for. Many times, the government benefits are worth much more than the inheritance, so this could be a really great loss for the child. Whereas if Tom and Wendy had put a special needs trust in place for the child still could have received the inheritance from her parents, but she also could have kept her government benefits. Now, in my last example here, Tom and Wendy have saved up a good amount of money, and they don't want their children to receive all this money upon their death. They want the money to be spread out to the children over time with some restrictions on what it can be spent on. If Tom and Wendy fail to put these provisions in place, their children will receive the entire inheritance upon Tom and Wendy's death, and there will be no restrictions on what the money is spent on. Whereas if Tom and Wendy planned ahead and used a trust, they could have limited the distributions their children received and what that money could be spent on. Now that we've gone over the scenarios on what the possibilities could be, how do you make this work? You really want to come up with a plan that addresses your needs and meets your goals. You may also want to discuss this plan with your family to make sure that everyone's aware of the plan so there's less fighting later on. We advise that you meet with the other professionals in your life as well, such as financial advisors and accountants, so that they too are kept in the loop when it comes to planning for your death. This would also be a good time to discuss any taxes that are involved so that there are no surprises later. Lastly, you want to implement any documents necessary to complete your plan, whether it's a last will and testament, beneficiary designation forms, or a trust document. No one likes to think of their death, but by putting this plan in place, you will have peace of mind that your loved ones will be taken care of. Susan was in your shoes before she came to us. Afterwards, she said, "I was surprised and appreciative that Jenna and everyone else I spoke with in the office were so helpful. Everyone took the time to answer all my questions, thoroughly explain everything we discussed, and suggest options. I feel much better about my decisions and whether everything I need is in place because of this." Now, we've talked about the value of powers of attorney and how to make sure your beneficiaries are provided for at your death. Next, Kristin's going to talk with you about what you can do to protect assets from the high costs of long-term care. Kristin?
Thanks, Jenna. So in this next section, I'm going to talk to you about why it's so important to protect your assets from long-term care cost. Do you know that if you do not put a plan in place and need care, the state of Pennsylvania and the nursing home will tell you that you need to spend every last penny on your care? We work with families every day to make sure that they do not lose their house or life savings, all while protecting what's most important, your spouse and families. But what is long-term care planning? It's the process of planning for your future while you are still able to make a plan and understanding what options are available and the costs involved. By planning before you get sick, you control what happens. But you might be wondering, if you get sick and need care, what options are available? And this is a great question. And honestly, we are very lucky in our area to have a variety of ways to receive care. Care choices range from in-home care to facility care and a lot of options in between. Most of us want to stay home no matter what, which is great, as long as it's practical and safe. There are agencies that provide in-home care services, or you can also hire individuals on your own. If you need some socialization or your caregivers need some respite, there are adult daycare centers that are able to provide a little additional help to keep you or your loved ones at home. However, at times, in-home care is just not enough and facility placement is necessary. Placement options can range from independent living to personal care homes, otherwise known as senior living communities, to memory care communities, to skilled nursing homes, or even continuing care retirement communities that actually encompass all levels of care. Now, there's also a variety of different ways to pay for your long-term care. But as I'm going to talk to you about today, only one way is permanent. Now, at any level of care, whether it's in your home or in some type of facility, you can private pay for that care. But the average cost of skilled nursing home care at this time in Pennsylvania is over $11,000 a month. So you can see that you could quickly become impoverished paying for care out of your pocket. Now, if you're a veteran, a spouse, or a widow of a veteran, you may be eligible for the aid and attendance pension benefit through the Veterans Administration. This can be a benefit of up to around $2,000 a month if you meet the medical and financial criteria of the program. There's long-term care insurance, which is a great option. Every long-term care insurance policy works a little bit differently, so you need to make sure you know what it covers if you need care. For instance, what type of care does it cover? Does it cover in-home care or just facility care or both? What's the daily benefit? With the average daily cost of nursing home care right now over $350 a day, if your policy only provides $100 a day of coverage, it's just not going to be enough. Now let's talk a little bit about Medicare. Most Medicare recipients think that you will receive 100 days of Medicare coverage annually if you need nursing home care. Unfortunately, that's just not true. Medicare was designed as a short-term solution for long-term care. It covers up to 100 days annually. The key words are up to. Most individuals only receive around 20 days of coverage under Medicare for skilled nursing home. So you can see why it's really important to have other options in place to help pay for your long-term care. So let's talk about the only long-term solution, Medicaid. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I'm one of the only certified Medicaid planners in Pennsylvania. So I could sit here and talk to you about Medicaid all day long, but I certainly do not want to bore you or hold you hostage all day long, especially on a beautiful day like today. But did you know that most residents in nursing homes are actually covered under Medicaid? Now you might be thinking, well, isn't Medicaid an impoverishment program? Well, yeah, it is. But there are strategies that we can implement to get you qualified for Medicaid and protect your assets from nursing home care. There is even a Medicaid program that pays for your in-home care. And I can't stress that enough. There is a Medicaid program that pays for in-home care. So if you can safely remain in your home with services, you can potentially do that and not have to move into a nursing home. So what happens if you do need care? What can the nursing home or the state of Pennsylvania take? What can they consider countable? What can they make you liquidate? Well, pretty much everything is available for your care. This includes bank accounts, CDs, investment accounts, life insurance policy, retirement accounts, real estate, pretty much everything you own. And guess what? If you're married, your spouse's assets are also available for your care. Working with an experienced elder law firm and putting a good plan in place is imperative to protect your life savings from the cost of care. I want to share some examples on how clients we worked with saved their pot of gold from that pesky leprechaun. Let's start with Susan and Mary. Mary's health and cognition have been declining, and her daughter Susan had to make the tough decision to place her mom in a skilled nursing home. Her cost of care there will be $11,000 each month. Mary's income is only $2,000 a month, but she has around $200,000 in assets plus her home. The nursing home told her daughter that Mary will need to pay $11,000 each month, and she figures that her $200,000 in assets will last around 18 months. The nursing home also informed her that after Mary's money is all gone, they will apply for Medicaid on her behalf. They also informed her that the state of Pennsylvania will place a claim against her house after she passes away. Now, doesn't that sound like a little leprechaun stealing your pot of gold? Thankfully, Susan called our office and we were able to tell her some really good news. It's not too late. Even though her mom needs nursing home care right now, it's not too late. She doesn't have to spend every penny on her care. There are still options to protect Mary's house and assets. Now, because Mary needs care right now, we might not be able to protect as much as we could have 5 years before the crisis, but we can still protect at least half of her assets, which is much better than the scenario the nursing home gave her, which was spend everything and lose her house. By making one phone call, Susan was able to protect her mom's house and assets. Now let's look at a slightly different scenario with a different outcome. Jane and John. Jane's husband, John, needs nursing home care today. Jane cannot eat or sleep because she is so worried about how she will afford her house without his income and paying $11,000 a month to the nursing home. But Jane did something. She called our office. And you know what? We met with her quickly and told her some really great news. We could help her protect everything because it was a marital situation. We could protect their house, their assets, and John's income, all while getting John qualified for Medicaid benefits to pay for his nursing home care. All Jane had to do was call us. I can pretty much guarantee that was one of the best phone calls that Jane made. Let's move on to Ken and Lucy. Lucy needs care, and Ken really wants to keep her home as long as possible. He thinks he can do this, but he really needs some help. His friends told him to call the Area Agency on Aging, which is a fantastic organization that offers so many services to our local seniors. The Office of Aging tells Ken that as much as they want to help him, unfortunately, Lucy's income exceeds the guidelines for the Medicaid waiver program, which is a program that pays for in-home care. The leprechaun here is the state of Pennsylvania and their income guidelines. The good news, the Office of Aging told Ken to call us because we can help him get Lucy qualified for the program. Now, a little backstory. Remember earlier I mentioned that I used to work for the Area Agency on Aging? The waiver program is actually the program I worked with setting up services for seniors to stay in their home. So this was 10 years ago, but it was really simple and easy and quick at that time to get somebody qualified for the in-home care. They would give me a call, I would perform the assessment, I would submit the paperwork to the state, and sometimes in as little as 2 weeks, services would be in their homes. Now, it takes at least 6 months most of the time to get those services started in your home. 6 months. What a joke and what a disservice to our seniors, especially because these people need help right now. Now let's get back though to Ken and Lucy. So the Office of Aging told them to call us because they know that we know a little secret and some strategies to work around the income and asset guidelines to get you qualified for the waiver program. So we worked with Ken to navigate that complicated process. And guess what? Not only were we able to get Lucy qualified for in-home care so she could stay home, we were able to protect their home, their assets, and also get her qualified in under 3 months. half the time that it takes most people. What a fantastic outcome. Now let's talk about Dan and Jean. So Dan and Jean do not need care right now, but unfortunately, Dan was just diagnosed with dementia. Jean took him to their primary care physician because he was starting to be forgetful and his mood was changing. While they are emotionally struggling with the diagnosis, they know it's more important than ever to be prepared for what lies ahead. The dementia diagnosis here is that nasty old leprechaun. But we're happy to say that Dan and Jean called our office so we could help them with their pot of gold. Not only are we an elder law firm, but we are a dementia law firm. We take every diagnosis very seriously, and we hold your hand step by step through every stage. We are not only staffed with attorneys, but social workers, long-term care planners, and a specialized care planner. After our initial consultation with Dan and Jean, Jenna and myself jumped into action, putting together the essential estate planning documents, powers of attorneys, wills, irrevocable trust, and started working on asset protection planning. Our specialized care planner got to work right away, making sure everything else is in order. Does Dan have the right doctor on his team, such as a neurologist or a specialist that is familiar with his form of dementia? You may have noticed that I mentioned his form of dementia, and that's an entirely different seminar. But did you guys know that there are various forms of dementia? Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, just to name a few. A dementia diagnosis isn't good enough. We need a doctor on your side that can tell you what type of dementia you have and can help you with the best treatment options. Every dementia is treated differently. Our specialized care planner coaches Dan and Jean through short-term and long-term solutions on things they can be doing now and things that they need to be preparing for through this journey. Dan and Jean ended up with the peace of mind knowing that their income, assets, house, and livelihood are preserved through the team approach and experience that we have to offer. Oh, and did I mention that, sorry, my cat came to visit. Did I mention that myself and many others on our team are certified dementia practitioners? Even more, I'm an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care trainer. So it's clear to see that if your loved one has a diagnosis, we are the elder law firm to help you navigate this part of your life. Now, how about Joe and Liz? Joe is actually the son of Ken and Lucy, who we talked about a little bit ago. They are worried about that pesky little leprechaun that almost robbed mom and dad of their assets and income, but they knew to call us to protect their pot of gold. Joe and Liz are nearing retirement, have no health issues, but want to get a plan in place. We worked with them to set up powers of attorneys, wills, irrevocable trust, and tuck some of their assets into these irrevocable trusts to protect them from future long-term care costs. Easy peasy, assets protected, nothing to worry about, and peace of mind at the end of the day. Now, Jenna briefly mentioned irrevocable trust earlier. I've mentioned it a few times through the scenario, but you might be wondering, what does an irrevocable trust get around that 5-year look back that I've heard about? How does this play into everything? Even with an irrevocable trust, there's still a 5-year look back when you make a gift. So the goal is always that we set up these irrevocable trusts 5 years before you get sick or need care. But unfortunately, we do not have a crystal ball, and sometimes a crisis hits sooner than we expected. This is the primary reason that we use irrevocable trust instead of gifting outright. But let me give you some scenarios. Let's talk about Donna. Donna asked us the question that so many others do. Can I just give my house to my child for $1? So the leprechaun here is what we refer to as the 4 Ds: divorce, debt, disability, and death. Let's say Donna gives her house to her son for $1 and he gets divorced. Well, that house now is part of the divorce settlement. What if Donna gives her house to her son for $1 and he has creditors? Well, then it's available for his creditors. What if Donna gives her house to her son for $1 and he becomes disabled and needs benefits? He may not qualify for the benefits that he needs. Or what if, God forbid, Donna gives her house to her son and he passes away? What does his will say? What happens to the house at that point in time? Now, if the 4Ds aren't enough to discourage Donna from outright gifting to her son, let me bring up two other major concerns. One, filial responsibility, which means that your children could be held legally responsible for your nursing home bills. I don't know many people who would want to put their children in that position. And two, Medicaid. If Donna gifts her house to her son and needs nursing home care within 5 years, there's a lot at risk, such as not being admitted into a nursing home, the risk of being discharged from that facility for non-payment, or not qualifying for benefits at all. So let's say that Donna needs care 3 years after gifting her house to her son. This is where the 5-year look back comes into the picture. This is the 5-year period prior to your Medicaid application being filed. During this 5 years, the state of Pennsylvania wants to ensure that you have not gave away any assets in excess of $500 a month. $500 a month, not $15,000, not $12,000. Those are tax gifting rules. For Medicaid, a gift is anything over $500 a month. If you've made gifts, the state of Pennsylvania will total up the gifts and issue a period of ineligibility for Medicaid. So let me clarify something. Just because you have made gifts doesn't mean that you have to wait 5 years to pay for care. But there is a process, and it must be done perfectly in order for you to qualify before the 5-year look back is over. This is one of the big reasons that we use irrevocable trust. We eliminate the 4Ds, filial responsibility, and Medicaid complications. Yes, there's still a 5-year look back, but we have flexibility with the trust if you need care earlier than expected. Now, benefits, options for care, and knowing what to do is very, very confusing. So what do you do? Put a plan in place. By putting a plan in place, you control what happens if you need care, who makes decisions for you, and ultimately the outcome. Now, I know the last section was overwhelming and a little scary, but think about it. Do you want somebody else making these decisions for you? Do you want to burden your family by not having the conversation or not having a plan in place? Of course not. Let's go back to Nancy. Nancy didn't have a plan. She was told there was nothing that could be done. She was hopeless and felt like nobody was on her side. Thankfully, her friend told her to call us, and we were able to jump into action and help her. But what if that friend didn't tell her to call us? She would have lost everything: her house, her income, her assets, and probably her will to keep moving forward each day. Do you have a friend like Nancy? Maybe, but maybe not. Do you want to leave it up to chance? Of course not. So what do you have to lose? Think about that for a minute. What do you have to lose? While you think about what you have to lose by not putting a plan in place, let's recap what we've talked about today. Why powers of attorney are valuable in a time of crisis, how to plan for your beneficiaries, and what happens if you do not have a plan in place to protect your assets. After everything we've talked about today, I hope you get this one thing. Planning ahead is essential to make sure that your family is taken care of and you do not spend any more than necessary on long-term care. So how do you make that happen? How do you get from where you are right now to where you want to be? By scheduling a long-term care strategy session. How does that work? A 1-hour Zoom or telephone call with our office. During our time together, we will ensure that your estate planning documents are in good order, develop a plan for your second half of life. Plus, we will answer all of the questions that you have about your unique situation. And that means at the end of our time together, you will know what documents you need. You will know your options for long-term care. Plus, you will have peace of mind knowing that you and your loved ones will be ready for the challenges of tomorrow. After our meeting, we will develop a written plan with recommendations. We will work with you to implement the plan, prepare any and all legal documents, and most importantly, we will walk you through this process from start to finish. So now you might be wondering, well, what's the catch? What does this cost? Jenna, do you want to share our offers today?
Sure. So the value of this 1-hour strategy session is typically $495. We actually offer this strategy session free. It's complimentary because we feel it's so important to know what you should be doing to prepare for your second half of life. So what's the catch? Well, really, there is no catch. However, it does take about 4 to 6 weeks to get into our office for one of these strategy sessions. Our office has blocked off time slots within the next few weeks for those of you ready to get started today. So if you schedule today, we can get moving on your strategy session so that you know exactly what you need to do. To book your strategy session, go to chatwithsgy.com. You can actually open a browser right now and type in chatwithsgy.com. There's an option for you to choose our Williamsport location or our State College location, and it will tell you what appointments are available, and you can actually just schedule right on the website like that. Or if you prefer, you can also call our office at 800-351-8334. Remember, this consultation is valuable because you will learn what documents that you need to put in place. You'll know what your options are for paying for long-term care if you need care at some point in time, and you will have peace of mind knowing that you and your loved ones will be better prepared for the challenges of tomorrow. All you have to do to schedule your strategy session is go to chatwithsgy.com or call 800-351-8334. Thank you all so much for sitting in with us and listening today. Have a great day, everybody.